I have Dr. Ed Lee here. He's a debate expert from Emory University. Doctor, thanks for joining us again.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, so we've got another debate coming up here. How is this one going to be different than the first one that was a couple weeks ago now?
I think that technology will radically change this debate. The fact that they will be muted for the first 2 minutes of the opponent's presentation will mean that the series of interruptions that we were visited upon by both of the candidates during the first debate just will not happen. It can't happen. And so that will radically change the tone and tenor of this debate.
We were just talking a little bit about this, but early voting has started for several states. So is this debate going to make a difference for voters?
I think that one of the arguments that President Trump made early in this election cycle were that these debates were showing up too late, and that he and his campaign had an understanding that early voting would be significant, and the ability of these debates to play a role in informing the electorate would dwindle as we go on. And I think that he is absolutely correct. I think that people have made their minds up, and this particular debate comes at a time where people will not be informed in a way that changes where they are. I don't think it will have a significant impact on the question of who people will vote for.
But do you think people are still going to be watching?
I hope they will watch, and I think that they will watch. That Donald Trump is a magnet for viewership. That, say what you want about him, that he is a master entertainer and has the capacity to draw people, whether you are on the political left or the political right, to pay attention to who he is. And that people will show up just to see whether or not that performance will be the same that they saw a few weeks ago. And this is potentially the last time that we may see him in this particular environment. And so I think that all of those are reasons why I think the viewership will be higher than we would anticipate, considering the lack of an impact that I think that it will have on the electorate.
So let's dive a little deeper into that. Let's talk about the logistics of this debate. Do you think it's going to look similar to that first debate, or do you think things are going to switch up a little bit? The VP debate was a little more tame. They actually got to dive into some topics, and then now we've had the confirmation hearings, which were also more tame. Do you think that this debate is going to actually be talking in depth about topics and what their stances are?
I wish I could answer your question with an affirmative yes or no, and I just don't know. That the wild card here is the personality of our president. That I don't know if he's going to be subdued in his presentation based upon the muting of his microphone, and I don't know if he's going to overcorrect and not be as aggressive. That if I'm his campaign, you got to walk a line, because if he overcorrects too much, then he looks bored, he looks lethargic, and that he's not engaged. But if he doesn't correct enough, then people are going to be talking about that first debate and playing video clips of that, and you don't want to have it happen. So he's in a difficult spot. I hope that we are in a place where we're having conversations about the policy, the issues that each of the candidates say that they want to discuss. One of the interesting things that's happened with this debate is the change of the topics. That historically, foreign policy has been featured in the third of these presidential debates, and it doesn't look like it's going to play a significant role here. I get a sense that the Trump campaign was very much interested in foreign policy being there, because that's where he is sort of touting out his bona fides as being someone who will defend the country, protect the country, and have a conversation about national security. I expect that that will get inserted in the conversation regardless of the questions that get asked.
Interesting. So the person who's going to be asking those questions is NBC political correspondent Kristen Welker. And we've already seen President Trump throwing some attacks at her and her political stance, saying she's a Democrat and that this is going to lean Democrat. The questions are, what do you think about that?
I think that it's part of the game of playing the refs in any sport that we have, and debate is a sport, competitive, different people showing up, try to win. What you want to do is to try to get the referee to adjust the way in which they see, think, and speak to the competition that is at play, and that's part of what this is about. That ultimately, can he get her to adjust the types of questions that she's asked in order to correct for the perceived notion of bias based upon her perceived political affiliation and affiliation with NBC. And so I think that it's much more to do with that than anything else, but we see this all over the place in competitions.
Sure. And, we've talked about their preparation and what that looks like, just preparing for presidential debates. Do you think that he's even preparing at all? He told some of those pool reporters that their questions that they throw at him when he gets off of Air Force One is more difficult than any debate preparation. So do you think he is even kind of diving into that at all?
I think that here are particular topics that he is thinking about and how he's going to frame his answer to them, that even in the town hall, that there were some changes in the way in which he talked about some particular issues, whether we're talking about QAnon or whether we're talking about the Proud Boys. I think that it's those sets of issues that he will be thinking, how do I communicate the message that I want around those sets of cultural issues and shift the conversation to a place that not only is he more comfortable, but a place that he needs to be, which is really on the question of a strong economy, how he was very much there in building what he has identified as the best economy that we have seen, but also speaking to the ways in which he is in a better place in order to address the coronavirus going forward, just based upon his own personal experiences. And so I think that it's a messaging set of preparation that he's having and not a deep dive in policy.
Sure. All right, let's talk about the big story this week, the Hunter Biden emails. Do you see that being a question during the debate, and how do you see Joe Biden reacting to that, if so?
I would be surprised if it is a question that comes from the moderator. I think that it will definitely become a part of the debate that we have. That one of the things that you saw Mike Pence do in a very masterful way was inserting his own set of questions into the proceeding and having a conversation with Senator Harris. I think that we will see some of that there is that period of time where they will not be muted, where they will allow for them to have some engagement with each other. I think it's during that period of time where we'll hear things about Hunter Biden and questions about it and Burisma and issues of corruption that comes up. It will be a part of our conversation. I think that Joe Biden will respond with an air of indignance in the way in which he has responded previously. That seems to be his strategy of not trying to give any sense of legitimacy to it, but to take on the role of an aggrieved parent. I don't know how successful that is, but I think that that's the strategy that they're taking.
Yeah, we saw even in the VP debate, both candidates dodging questions. That could be a similar sentiment this time around with Joe Biden when it comes to that, along with court packing, those tough questions that he's asked. Okay.
I think that I do think, Daytona, one of the things that will be interesting that will make it a little bit more difficult to dodge the questions is that it feels as if you are having a conversation with the moderator. There's 2 minutes, you have to answer the question and you get to speak that in thorough. And for you to have consistently not respond to a question that she is asking really comes across in a way that signals that you're not serious about her as a moderator, as a journalist, and even entertaining the debate process that's there. So I think that will help a little bit. I don't think that you can contain the political impulse that each of these people have to avoid conversations that could potentially hurt them politically, but I think it becomes a little bit more difficult.
Yeah, will they be muted? Is that going to actually work?
They will be muted. We'll see how it works. And one of the things that I think that you'll be interested in paying attention to in our audience and thinking about are the nonverbals that they have. That nonverbal communication plays a significant role in communicating a message to people. In fact, it is far more effective than verbal communication. And I think that both of these candidates, it would behoove them to think about their looks, their stares, when they smile, when they grimace, how do they think about those things? Kamala Harris was kind of masterful in using nonverbal communication in order to speak to her dismay at times with her debate against Mike Pence. I think that both President Trump and Vice President Biden should be thinking about how do they communicate nonverbally their concerns that they have when the other is speaking, instead of that need to verbally jump in.
Right, speaking directly to the camera, to the voters at home. Okay, so I guess my final question is, what are your recommendations as a debate coach and expert to both of these candidates to potentially win this debate?
With me, the issue that I judge these on, or I think about them in, is that ultimately, what is the messaging that you're trying to get across, and are you connecting with the particular audience that you need to get that message? If you are President Trump, I think that you need to spend the significant part of this debate talking about the economy. That I've said this before, and I think that we are still here, that his path towards victory is really one that goes through a conversation around the manufacturing sector, the loss of jobs, and his capacity as a business person to regenerate the economy. That in fact, it is the place in which he still holds a lead over Vice President Biden as far as the public thinks of who's best able to steward the economy. And if James Carville is correct, and I think that he is, that it's the economy, stupid, that's a good place to be winning. And so I hope that he spends much more time talking about those sets of issues than tilling in the fields of the cultural politics that's at play. I hope that that's where he goes. If you're Joe Biden, I am one who is trying to run out the proverbial clock. How do you just not have the typical Joe Biden gaffe where you say the thing that you don't want to say? And that can you speak to the niceties and the aspirations of hope and the politics of progress and really leave people feeling good about you saying absolutely nothing? And that is a strategy, and it can be effective. As we've seen through much of this campaign for him this year, it's been an effective strategy.
All right, well, again, I say this every time, it's going to be an entertaining night for all the voters out there, and the biggest message is for people to watch and get out there and vote, right?
Absolutely. Vote, vote, vote.
All right.
Thank you for having me.
Ed Lee over there, thank you so much for joining us for all these debates.
You have a great one.
You too.